Good morning, and welcome to the July 9th, 2019 Historic Site Preservation Board monthly meeting. May we have a roll call, please?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair. Member Huff?
Present.
Member Marsh is absent. Member Kaiser?
Here.
Member Dixon is absent. I think she said she was running late. Member Lavoy?
Here.
Vice Chair Hayes?
Here.
And Chair Burkett?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. May we have a report on the posting of the agenda, please?
The agenda for this meeting was posted for public review at the City Hall Bulletin Board on the west side of the council chamber and at the Planning Department counter in accordance with applicable law.
Does the board have any revisions to the agenda? May I have a motion to accept the agenda?
So moved.
Second. We have a first by Member Lavoy and a second by Member Hayes, right? Any further discussion, board? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries 5 to 0. Okay, we will now move on to public comment. This time has been set aside for members of the public to address the Historic Site Preservation Board on agenda items and items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. Although the Historic Site Preservation Board values your comments pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot take any action on items not listed on the posted agenda. There will be 3 minutes assigned for each speaker. Testimony for public hearings will be taken at the time of the hearing, and we have 2 today. So do we have anyone wishing from the public to address the board today? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent calendar. Item 1A, approval of the minutes for June 11, 2019 HSPB meeting. Does anyone have changes to the minutes of the board of June 11?
I move to accept the minutes.
I have just a couple of additions. On page 3, the minutes, of course, of page 3, under board initiatives, just a couple of things I'd like to add. Right after outreach on the beginning of the second line, first of all, it would be additional public outreach because we're already doing quite a bit. So I think that's important. And then the other point that I think should be included, there was a lot of discussion by the board, is collaboration with the COD students, a case study project. So if we could just add those 2 comments to the minutes, I'd greatly appreciate that.
Got it.
So if there are no other comments from the board about the minutes, I'd like to see if there's a motion.
I would state the motion to approve
Okay.
with those corrections.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Member Lavoy and a second by Member Huff. Excuse me. Any further discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries 5 to 0. Okay, now it's time to proceed to agenda item number 2. The first was 2A, an application by Martin Lawrence Bullard, owner, requesting Class 1 historic resource designation of the Alan and Mildred Kramer residence located at 800 East Granville Belmonte. May I have a staff report, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. As noted in your staff report, this is a application that is brought forward by the applicant. The applicant has worked with Palm Springs Preservation Foundation to prepare the Historic Resources Report dated March 2019, which is the basis of my staff report. You've all had an opportunity to tour the home, I believe, and there are some photos additionally in the staff report. The project has been evaluated against the criteria for Class 1 Historic Site Resource Designation beginning on page 4 of your staff report. And as noted in the Historic Resources Report, the building is being recognized for its period. It's recognizing of its particular period, the period post-World War II. Also for its distinctive architectural style, which has been referred to as New Formalism in the resources report. And as well, our building represents a very good example of the work of designer James McNaughton, whose work is particularly interesting because of his work in the film industry and television set design very early in his career. The analysis of integrity of this site begins on page 5 of your staff report. And as noted, most of the aspects of integrity are still intact with the Kramer residence. I will note, as you'll see in the staff report and under materials, there have been some areas where materials have been removed or some of the existing materials and scored concrete block have been covered with tile. But generally, the home is in good material and has good integrity. And most of these details that have been covered up or have been changed can be reinstalled if an owner or future owner wishes to do so. As noted also on page 6 of your report, we don't have any information about the original colors of the home, but from the early black and white photos, it does appear that the home was painted in a tan or a gray color with a trim and fascias in white. Good morning, Mr. Marsh.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Nice to see you. On page 7 of your staff report is the analysis by staff on the character-defining features of the site, the non-contributing features, and we've noted those areas where the things have been changed or modified. And then on page 8 of 9, you see some of the areas where some of the alterations have occurred. That concludes my staff report. As noted, we do believe that the home qualifies as a Class 1 historic site, and we are here to answer any questions regarding that recommendation from the board. And I believe Eric Rosenau from the Palm Springs Preservation Foundation is in the audience representing the owner if you have any other further questions. And that concludes my staff report.
Thank you. So would the applicant please come forward?
Questions of staff.
All right.
You want to do questions
Oh,
of
I'm
staff
sorry,
first?
just one moment, yeah. Any questions, first of all, of staff? None? Yes,
Hi. I did have a question about the southern facade.
Okay.
You know, that's solid now. And I see that there's, you know, some ghost images of openings, you know, windows and such. So just reading through, looking at the front page, which is page 3, at Seen at Night, and you can kind of see that southern facade. It looks like they're vertical windows on, you know, that front. And I was just wondering how many windows. I know in the report on page 27, it says enclosure of the 2 pair of narrow horizontal windows on the southern facade. So I was wondering if it was 2 pairs, which equals 4, or if it was just 2, and they appear to be vertical windows instead of horizontal.
I read it as being 4 windows, 2 pairs.
2 pairs, and they were vertical
Yeah,
rather than
that's my
horizontal.
understanding. That was my understanding.
They're listed a couple of times as horizontal windows, like on page 27. And so I was confused about that. And page 19, it says 2 pairs of narrow horizontal strips. But of course, those are reversible anyway.
Yeah, and let's see if Mr. Rosenau can maybe clarify that question.
Okay.
I was not able to make a site visit on this particular house, so I
Yeah.
haven't seen it when I was out there.
Yes, yeah, okay. It's just a question, not an issue, really. Thank you.
Board, any other comments? Our questions of staff? No? If not, would the applicant please come forward? And if you come up to the mic, give your name and address and tell us about the project. There will be 10 minutes to present and 2 minutes for rebuttal if desired after any public comments.
Yeah, I just prepared a few words for this morning. Good morning, members of the HSPB and city staff. My name is Eric Rosenau. I serve on the Palm Springs Preservation Foundation. And I'm a proponent of this project. The Kramer Residence is in the movie colony and represents a unique form of architecture called New Formalism. It was designed by James McNaughton, who was a Hollywood set designer by trade. Upon viewing the home, it's as if one walks into a Hollywood set. Arched colonnades that surround the swimming pool, hovering over patio complete with terrazzo flooring. The home could be a silent character in a Peter Sellers film. It's exciting that Palm Springs is uncovering more James McNaughton designed homes, and we have the chance of putting them on the map with this historical designation. The home has been meticulously restored and has historic elements remaining. It's been featured in many Modernism Week and other architectural related events. You've had the chance to read the nomination by my colleague here at PSBF. I urge you to vote in favor. Any specific questions, the author, Steve Vaught, is in the audience, and I would actually direct most of the questions to him as he has meticulously prepared the report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. We appreciate your comments and coming forward. So are there public comments from the audience? Yeah. Yes, please come forward and also give your name and address, and you will have 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me today. I'm Steve Vaught. I currently live in Riverside at the moment, but I am the author of the nomination report, and of course was just horrified to realize that I had written horizontal when I meant to write vertical on those late night things. I have to get that. I don't think I've ever gotten that right. So. But I'm here to answer any questions you might have on this home. It's been a great honor to have written about it and to study it, because I didn't know very much about James McNaughton. I had heard his name. I had known about the Hearst House up in Little Tuscany, but had known very little about this man until the research on this report uncovered so much of what a fascinating character he was and the contributions that he made to Palm Springs architecture that, as my colleague Eric had pointed out, is not as well known today. He's sort of a mystery that is now becoming discovered, even though he brought a great deal of international attention to Palm Springs mid-century architecture by being one of the first mid-century architects to appear not once but twice in Architectural Digest. And his homes we're just starting to try and catalog them at the present time. And so I know that the current owners of the Hearst Morrell House are thrilled to be restoring it and to know about him. So, and as it was pointed out in the staff report, this is an extremely rare mid-century bit of architecture in New Formalism, which was reserved largely for commercial or civic designs like the Lincoln Center and things like that. And the idea of this man taking this monumental style and bringing it down to a really livable level was quite impressive. I'm sure you saw at the site visit that this is something unique and really holds well for that. And thrilled to have participated in that, and also, of course, recommend that I hope that you all vote in favor of this nomination. And if anyone has any questions, that's, and maybe someone can explain to me vertical versus horizontal. Thank you all.
We're reading your report.
There we go. Yeah, exactly. That's a good sign of that. Somebody said you should put little things in there to see if people will catch it, but that was it. It was on purpose.
Not a question, but I just was sitting here thinking about how you were a presenter, a speaker at, I think it was our third annual event.
That's right.
Which probably was at the Jewish Community Center
It was.
then. And now we're at the Convention Center.
Oh, wow.
So we welcome you back, and we hope that you will be coming to see us
Oh,
more.
I'd be thrilled. It'd be such an honor. As you know, my métier is the 20s and 30s and things like that.
Right.
But I also, dove into the mid-century with this one, which was terrifying. But it was such a beautiful house to work with, and the owners are great supporters, and they have done, in speaking with them, have really want to preserve this house the way they really appreciated the way that it was. And as you had pointed out, the things are reversible and minor in it. Oops, I'm out of time.
Okay.
So,
Thank you so much for coming.
Mr. Chair, Why don't you complete the public hearing and then close the public hearing, and then we can take questions,
Okay,
okay?
all right.
Should I do?
All right, so we'll close the public hearing at this point. And now, can we talk about questions at this point? No, because we really need to talk about the board having questions. Mr. Lyon.
Start.
Mr. Lyon.
I'm sorry?
Okay. My question is, you had mentioned about having our questions afterward. Comments?
What I was saying was, open the public hearing, take testimony, close the public hearing, and then take questions of the board. Deliberate at that point,
Okay, so we're going to close the hearing at this point.
if you have no more public speakers.
Pardon?
If you have no more
Yeah.
public speakers,
And I don't believe there is anyone else from the public that wants to speak.
then you would close the public hearing,
So I'm going to, then we'll officially close the public hearing.
and then bring the action back to the board for questions.
Okay, now, board, questions, please. I think, Mr. Hayes?
So I have a question of the author of the report. So, okey doke. Hi, thank you.
Hello.
So regarding the removal of the louver doors that were on the front,
Yes, sir.
can you address that and the significance of that loss and whether or not it can or can't be, those can or can't be brought back, and just discuss that a little bit with us?
I was not able to determine when exactly that occurred because the house had had several changes of ownership over the decades. But, it obviously appears in the original photographs, the original plans of it were there by the time Martin Lawrence Ballard and Michael Green bought it, that they were already gone. They appear to be reversible. With that, I think that they were enclosed purely for privacy because, as you can see, it's a lovely thing, but at the same time, it was a little, it really did open the house, since Mr. McNaughton liked to refer to his houses as see-through houses, and that house is basically, you're living in a glass, literally a glass house. And so if you had those open louvered areas there, which were quite charming, but it's right there on the street at Phillips and all of that, that I think somebody just filled it in for privacy. As I noted in my report, the house had been a particular target for robberies during the period of time, so I have the feeling that's what it was. But long answer to your short question, I think they are reversible if desired. They were very charming elements.
Yeah, well, and they also, whether or not any other changes have affected the massing in a significant way, in your opinion?
It's interesting that it has, and I was surprised to see how much was original. The only thing, the most important thing that changed that I was able to see was that originally it had a carport that had been replaced by a garage. But my impression of it was that actually appears to be an improvement because it's very subtly done. It covers the footprint of the original carport, and it presents itself on the street in a very retiring sort of way. There were some finials that were removed off the top. Should I shut up?
No.
Okay. I need that at
I don't
home.
know why that's going on. Talking back to us.
I see.
You have at least an hour.
But there was a great deal left. Now, some changes have been made by Martin Lawrence Ballard and Michael Green, which were the windows. He did fill those in, and they were vertical bands. And there were two pair. There were two in each room of the bedrooms. Also, the bathroom had been remodeled, the master bath, and a few changes like that. But surprisingly, there was a lot still left over that, including the original coffee table, which I thought was very interesting right there in the center. So. But I found the integrity quite impressive for a house of its age and with the amount of owners that have come and gone through it.
Great. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
before you leave, on that same
Okay.
issue, I don't remember seeing the colonnade. Was the wall filled in solid flat? Or is the colonnade
Do you
still?
mean the louvered?
Yeah, I mean, okay, the louvers are contained within a colonnade. If you look on page 8 of I believe, the staff report.
Oh, sorry. Should have brought my own copy.
No, no.
Oh, thank you. Well, the louvers enclosed a courtyard,
Yeah,
on
yeah,
two
yeah, but,
sides.
okay, I'm talking about the face of the wall. Okay, when they filled in the louvers, did they just flatten out the entire wall? Or can you still see the columns?
No, it's flattened.
It's flattened. Okay,
They also raised the level of the perimeter wall on the one side facing the street
And it's
a bit
obscured-
higher than it was.
and it's
Originally, it was-
obscured by landscaping.
Yeah.
Right.
Originally, it was just a sort of a secret garden or something. It had a little area, and they have turned it into an area with a hot tub and all. And replaced, the tile that they put on the ground was intended to match the color scheme and the appearance of the 1964 house.
Yeah, thank you.
Huh?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Ms. Dixon.
do you know how many McNaughton houses there are in Palm Springs?
I think about a dozen that we know so far. One of the great treasures I found on this report was finding his former assistant of 18 years, and a lot of the photographs and information came from it. And we've been trying to unearth, every time I find one. I did put some at the back of the report, but they're still to be discovered, which is kind of fun. But I
Great.
would say he did about a dozen that we know of, not including some spec houses.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Board, any other questions? The applicant? Okay. Thank you very much.
Great.
Appreciate it.
Thank you all very much.
So, Board, what other questions or comments do we have now on the case?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Lavoy?
comments. While it's a stunning house, and most of it is there, I do find the loss of the colonnade and the screen wall that goes between it on the front facade an unfortunate lack of integrity. If you, page 8, top photograph, and then look on page 5, colonnades and classical references were very much a part of this style. And to lose this on a front facade is, I think, unfortunate, and decreases the integrity. Also, the little finials, while just little finials, are often an important part of this style of architecture. And also, I would mention that the color is mentioned as, it's white now, it was tan, and it is mentioned in the report as non-contributing, but it is just one more ding against integrity. So the uneasiness I would have would be making it a Class 1.
Board, other comments?
I mean, I would have to agree with Board Member Lavoy on that I think the loss of those louvered doors are a significant loss. And it's not just the louvered doors, it's the column and it's the airspace at the top of them and also the finials. And while, they certainly are replaceable, I would like to see if there's a possibility that we could make that a condition of the approval that, and there's a number of ways to address those louvers while allowing the owner to maintain some privacy. I certainly understand the want of privacy, and there's a way to address that that would not really impact their lack of privacy or their gained privacy at all. And I think the addition of the finials, because when it comes to the detail, it's really is the massing of this project and the fact that your observation of taking a traditionally commercial, larger scale design style and bringing it down to a residential is really of note. And I think part of that is achieved by those very delicate finials. And you lose the delicacy of those finials by them not being there. And I also think it's a really easy thing to replace. It's not that difficult, but so those would be my 2 thoughts on that.
Okay. Ms. Dixon?
I think those are valid points. However, I feel that the house, aside from those 2 obstacles. The house has really been maintained, and they've really done a good job of maintaining the integrity of the McNaughton style of architecture. So I feel that this is definitely a property that should be set forward and considered for historic preservation. And I can understand you wanting some of those things in the future, but I don't think that that would be reason to not move forward on it.
Thank you. Ms. Huff?
I would agree with Linda, and I miss the louvers and those finials because they're reversible. I don't think it should hold up the Class 1 classification, so I'm supportive of it.
I agree.
Okay. Mr. Marsh?
I support the nomination. The house is largely intact. It's a really excellent example of the modernist style and an early example. And it brought to light the work of McNaughton. And the case report was really professionally written. It was very well done. So I was impressed with the overall putting the material together to do this nomination. So I support the nomination.
Okay, I think, yes, Mr. Hayes.
Sorry. I have a question of staff. So, given the discussions up here, and if it's designated Class 1, and with our new ordinance, if the current owners or an owner in the future wish to replace those louvers, which would require some demo on the facade of the building and add the finials, what would that process be?
Well, the process is outlined for alterations to Class 1 sites in the ordinance. So it would just follow the normal procedure that's outlined for alterations to a Class 1 site.
But it would still come before, that wouldn't be a counter thing, that would still come before the board?
If they were to bring it back in a way that I could substantiate that it was off from plans or something of the original home in which they were taking it back to that, it's potentially one that I could approve at staff level. If I have not enough material to substantiate that, I would bring it to the board.
But and I guess my reason for asking this is it's an easy thing, so people out there in the viewing public who might be concerned about this, that kind of a change would be, I think, an easy change to make.
As long as we could substantiate that it was done, according to some evidence of what was done originally, we would work it that way, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, yes, Mr. Lyon.
Mr. Chair, I just want to make the board or remind the board of what your options are here, because this is an interesting conversation that you're having. When you consider this particular case, you can make a recommendation to City Council for Class 1 designation. If the board feels that there is enough impairment of the integrity, you could then determine that the integrity finding cannot be made, in which case you could make a recommendation for Class 2, or you could not recommend it at all. So those are your options should you, if the issue of integrity is one that you're chewing on and wrestling with.
And might I just add to that, in terms of Class 1 or Class 2, the protections are still the same for either Class 1 or Class 2 under our ordinance, but also the benefits are the same, that the owner can still apply for a Mills Act contract either as a Class 1 or a Class 2. No, we had that discussion with our attorney, and Mr. Priest indicated that Class 2 would qualify.
He did?
Yeah.
Okay.
So no one is fine.
Oh, okay, then I'll add my comment as well. I totally understand the two areas of concern, but if these are listed as non-contributing, which I believe that they are, then I think they've been so noted. So my question to myself is, is this enough to really stop this from going forward as a Class 1? The other thing I think of note of interest particularly is the carport being filled in with a garage. However, again, that's listed as non-contributing. So it is my opinion then that this does have enough strength to be a Class 1 site. And I think if there's any other board comments, if not, I think maybe it's time for us to consider a motion. So I have a motion by any of the members, please.
Mr. Chair, I move that we adopt Resolution HSPB 119, a resolution of the Historic Preservation Board of the City of Palm Springs, and recommend to the City Council that we designate the Ellen Kramer residence located at 800 East Gran Via Valamonte as a Class 1 historic resource structure, subject to the conditions.
Yes. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. So, any further discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
would the maker of the motion consider an amendment to include a strong recommendation to restore both the finials and the colonnade louvered element to the left of the entry?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I was just going to add to my motion, late, but I was going to do it.
Thank you.
Definitely. Ask a second.
Right.
And that's with
Second.
with recommendations. Is
With
that correct?
recommendations that they restore.
I mean, it's a recommendation, but it's not required.
Correct.
Okay, recommendation I'll go with. Thank you.
So now we have a first and a second with the amendments that have been so noted.
So noted.
So any other discussion? If not, excuse me, it's time to take a vote. So all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. No opposed, right? 7-0. Okay, moving on to 2B. It's an application by Diane Bald, representing the Diane Budman Bald Family Trust. Owner requesting Class 1 historic resource designation of the Kirk Douglas residence located at 515 West Via Lola Drive. May I have a staff report, please?
Mr. Chair, we were unable to complete this item for today's public hearing, so our recommendation to you is to continue this item to a date certain of your September meeting, which would be September
10.
10th. Thank you. To hold the public hearing at that time.
Board?
So moved.
Staff is, moving right along, so okay, we have a first
Member Lavoy and Member Dixon?
and a second. So any further discussion? Seeing none? Oh, do you have a question? Oh, seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
Moving on to number 3, unfinished business, we have none. And under new business, we have none, so we'll move right into number 5 on the agenda, which is the discussions. 5A, work plan for the years 2019-2020, Mr. Lyon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. From your last meeting, you were considering the sites that you would be interested in working on during the coming fiscal year. And each of you forwarded to me your list of priorities from the 10 that were suggested. And I have that tally here that I'll pass out to you. And I've listed on this memo what wound up counting up to the top 5. So I'll bring this around to you. So what you see in the tally that you have is the top 5 that are your work priorities are the Las Palmas Liquor Store building, the Arabi Adobe, and I don't know the address. I know you gave that to me, but I haven't had time to pull that into the report. the Araby Rock Houses, Caraccia Pension, and the Gas Company Building on Sunrise. The other 5 that are not listed there are the ones that have the higher scores. So if these are the ones that you would like to establish as your work plan for this year or something else, that's what we would try to put together for this time, and then that would be your established work plan, along with the education and outreach that you talked about at the last meeting. So this is really wrapping up your discussion from last month on your work plan. And I'm available to answer any questions you have.
Board, any questions of Mr. Lyon?
Ken, I have a question. I mean, the Las Palmas Liquors, I looked at this many times, and I went and I looked at it carefully. Now, the building is excellent. One of the biggest problems is the displays in the window. And so if we proceed with this, and this does become a Class 1, can we do anything with guidelines, or are they free to put whatever they want in the windows? Because we're back to square one the way that it looks.
Any business is required to follow the sign ordinance.
Okay, yes, they
So
do have
if-
a neon sign, but
Pardon?
they do have a neon sign, but aside from that, they've got like racks in front of all these windows full of all this stuff, and it really looks bad.
On the issue of any placards or signage, that can be handled as code enforcement. In terms of the layout of the material inside the store, if the building were to be designated, you could certainly put a recommendation through that they actually arrange the stock and the merchandising such that the windows are more open.
Okay, thanks.
This is somewhat similar, I think, with the Cody gas station, if I
Yes.
remember correctly. That, yeah, exactly. Okay. Board, any?
Which is looking beautiful.
Yes.
Yes, it
It
is.
is. Yeah, absolutely. Should be proud of that one. Mr. Lyons, that's concludes
I'm
your
looking for action
report.
from the board. If this is the set of projects that you'd like to establish,
So-
then I need a motion.
Yes. Board, do I have a motion?
Okay, I move that we approve the proposed list of projects for the next fiscal year, 1920.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
You have a motion by Member Dixon and a second by Member Kaiser. We take a vote, please.
Can I have discussion?
Any other discussion? Oh, Mr.
I just want to add.
You have a discussion.
Let it not be lost at the bottom of that little chart. Keep in mind, these work priorities are processed at a staff level after any historic site designation applications are received from the public, i.e. those applications that are received from the public are given priority over these. So I just want to manage your expectations.
Thank you.
Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question from a procedural standpoint. So these would come out of the dollar, like we would put out an RFP to have these reports done by an outside party.
That's
How does
correct.
that process work as far as, so council gives us the money, so we have the money. Do you, like, when do you start to put, like, or when would you put out an RFP?
Well, right now, I'm putting out an RFP on the O'Donnell Golf Course Clubhouse, which was requested by the city council at one of the last meetings. So it tends to be a few weeks or a month before I'm ready to start working on it.
And then, would you have that in your back pocket as approved with these? And then when you have time to go forward, you would do it, or would you, when you?
No,
go-
I would tend to bring the contracts forward when we're ready to start the project.
Okay,
Otherwise, I may have contracts that then would be expiring before I could actually get the work started.
okay, thanks, just curious, thanks.
Yes.
And
Member Dixon.
Ken, the funds that we had left from the last fiscal year, will those roll over to
No.
this? Did we lose those funds?
Those are swept back into the general fund. Any department that has unused funds, the funds are then returned to the general fund and
So no one-
reapportioned for the next fiscal year.
No one approved allowing the board to have a membership?
They don't allow us over that, no.
Thank you.
I have a question. Would it be possible to approach like the Palm Springs Historic Preservation group who've done a lot of these other reports to see if we could interest them in doing a report on any of these, which would then not come out of our budget?
They are certainly ones who we could solicit proposals from. Whether they would choose to do it at no cost to the city would be their prerogative.
Anybody who's interested, lunch is on me.
Okay, any other, yes, Mr. Marsh?
Would an average nomination be about $5,000?
They vary. The ones that we've seen most recently, which was, I believe, the one for the Crocker Citizens National Bank, I think ran around 8 or 9. The one for the Oasis Oasis Hotel ran, I think, around 7 or 8. So they're in that general vicinity.
Mr. Chair? And what is our budget for?
60.
We have about $55,000.
Okay. And but that's our complete budget,
Yeah, that-
including our special event?
Yeah, our
Okay.
symposium
All right,
and
thank
the
you.
work that we do here.
Okay, any other discussion items? Okay, then I'll call the question. So all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you.
7-0. Thank you.
And I also want to just thank the board. This was a very efficient process that you guys went through on this. I appreciate your promptness on getting all that stuff back to me so we could get this pulled together by the September meeting.
Well, I think
That's
we
excellent.
also really appreciate the opportunity to be able to do these work-study programs. It really made everybody do, I think, a lot of soul-searching about what was really important to the board. So now it's time for board member comments. Board, what comments do we have today? Okay. Am I the only one? Okay. Oh, Mr. Lavoy, yes.
It came to my attention both by driving around the neighborhood and then something I got because I'm part of something else that's advertising. On the northwest corner of Indian Trail and Camino Paracella, there's a house identified as a Walt Disney house. It has been recently remodeled, and it is purely decorative, but what they have done is really unfortunate and made a postmodern dwellification of what was a Spanish colonial revival house. And I was wondering, is it historic? Was it protected? Is it
I heard you say Indian Trail and I missed the cross street.
Camino Paracella, northwest corner? It's got a gate on the corner with a pointy top.
I think if I know the house, it is a Class 3, and that we can look and see when that work was initiated, whether it was initiated before the current ordinance or after.
Okay.
If it was initiated before the current ordinance, it wouldn't have been filtered through for our review.
And it's one of those, it is even if it was after, it's sort of like it is a little bit of work, but it's amazing what a little bit of work can do to absolutely destroy a house. They're quite proud of it, by the way, but
Breathe.
We will take a look at it, Member Lavoy.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes. Mr.
I do have one question. Did anyone ever check out the property on Camino Real next to Michael's house that's boarded and something's going on?
No, you had given me information on it, and I failed to follow up, so I'll make a note of that again. This is the Michael's house that's on Camino Real, south of
Correct.
Coffee. Is the building that you're talking about north or south of that building?
It would be south of that
All right.
building.
I apologize, I
That's-
didn't look into that last month, but I'll do so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I'd first like to thank the staff for the Steve McQueen visit. This was very reassuring to see what has happened on that property, and I think then there were also board members that were able to attend, so we really greatly appreciate that opportunity.
And we are trying to get that to City Council this month.
Yeah, good, that was my next question. Thank you.
I knew that was going to be your next question.
I know. That's me again. Okay. The next item is, Board, as the interviews for the new HSP members we're not scheduled until this coming Thursday. We'll be dark in August. I'd like to ask the board's consideration to allow me to select 2 annual event subcommittee members. And the reason for that is so that we can have our first visit in July, because if we're dark in August, that means we won't be back in session until September. And we've always started our first meetings in July because it really takes that long to be able to put this all together. And if we wait until September, we're really behind the 8 ball, because there's a lot of work that we can be doing actually over the month of August. So I'd just like to see if there's a concurrence from the board that allow me to do that, so we could have our first meeting in July. So, then, okay, thank you. Greatly appreciate that. I've already got 2 pages worth of ideas to present to, to the committee. And we'll definitely be taking into consideration restoration this year and preservation, Mr. Lavoy, yes. And thank you for your suggestions on that. On the initiatives that I forwarded to the board in June, one of them was that we would host a CPF workshop. So, and staff may be covering this in their report, but I've asked them if we could please consider scheduling something in October or November so that we can get it on our schedules. And then my last question is the scheduling of the next site visits. We'll be able to try to get a couple of site visits in on those pending nominations prior to the September meeting.
I will try to get as many of them scheduled as possible.
Right, good.
I don't know, I don't have an answer for that for you, but we'll be working through them as fast as we can.
I didn't ask for a specific number, just can we keep moving?
Indeed, we will.
Okay, thank you very much. So that concludes my comments. Anybody else think of anything else? Okay, seeing none. Then I think it's time for us to move to adjournment.
Nope, you need staff comments.
I think we need to have some staff comments.
We have a couple of things. For your study session, because that's being held during the lunch hour, we will be providing lunch for you in the Development Services Conference Room starting at 11:30. We have trays of sandwiches, fruit, vegetables for you, so you can go ahead and prepare a plate for yourself there starting at 11:30. And then at noon, we will begin here in the large conference room. So again, lunch will be provided for you before the study session. And then Ken, you had some comments on the study session itself, materials, et cetera.
Yeah. Did you have anything else?
No, I don't.
There will be some material that will be passed out at the study session. I have some of it here, which I'm going to give to you now, and then the applicant will be providing you some additional material. And this will be this particular board's first time of doing a study session, so I will give you some instructions at the beginning of the study session as to how to go about making the comments and how to not make comments, so as not to prejudice yourself when this does come before, if it does come before the board in the future. Okay, so I will pass those out in just a minute. I also wanted to give you a brief update on where we are with the Cornelia White House. The progress has been continuing. So see if I can make this run. Let's see if I can make this run. Here we go. And I know you've told me, is it 4 or 5?
So it doesn't do that, so you're stuck with that screen.
Okay, I think I can do it. Apologize for this.
Just use the arrows to
Okay. So, just a couple of pictures here. Here you can see some of the splicing that's been done on the board and batten siding that lies across some of the back of the building. This, as you know, was identified by the board as wanting to be done in a piece-by-piece manner. So where the boards have been able to be salvaged, they have salvaged them. And of course, you can see here, the board and batten all are new. And then the railroad ties that you can see there that are a bit darker are also new ties that have now been spliced in. Where the vertical railroad ties existed and there's rot near the bottom, they have been spliced in, as you can see here. Again, so that there's both structural integrity of that corner as well as a way for the water to be prevented from migrating back into the structure. This was a slide on the left that you saw the last time I gave you an update, and that is, I believe, the same corner in which the new board and batten siding has been installed over the top. And as you see in the picture on the right, where possible, they have been salvaging the board and batten, primarily the boards, not the battens. This is the new copper flashing that's being installed at the bottom of the wall to divert any moisture that does get into the wall away from the bottom of the wood timbers. And there you can see as they're forming it and then as it's laid in place. And then as you see the photo on the right here, once the moisture barrier goes over the top of that plywood, then the boards will be laid in place. And I'll show you that in a minute. So here you see the way that the wrap is being made for the vapor barrier that goes behind the board and batten siding. You can see how it runs then over the top of the flashing so that moisture that's trapped that does get into this wall behind the siding drips down to that copper flashing and is weeped out of the wall. The electrical panel that you see here are one of those small details that the contractor has picked up on. They've been able to relocate the switchgear that is in that box that was feeding the heat pump for the home. And so this box will actually be relocated off the house and onto the walls where the mechanical equipment is, which will improve the visibility and the integrity of this particular portion of the home. And then the picture on the left is simply an inside view of the existing railroad ties. It is kind of interesting when you see that you can still see the original holes from the railroad spikes. And the picture on the right is the very last of the trailer jacks and the hunks of wood that are holding up the floor. This is the center part of the house. The structural engineer has required that the outer ends of the house, the floors be redone first, and then the center part be redone. And so the last portion of the floor replacement is happening in the center living room right now. And more to come. Thank you. Any questions on that? No. All right, let me pass out some of the material for this afternoon's study session. And then technically we have a break until 11:30, yes? Okay. So, Mr. Chair, what you will want to do then is adjourn this meeting.
Right.
And then, adjourn it to the,
Yeah, exactly.
to the 12 o'clock session.
Right. So it's time for adjournment of this particular meeting. The Historic Site Preservation Board will adjourn to a study session beginning at 12 noon. Today, July 9th, 2019, the large conference room at City Hall, 3200 East Tahquitz Canyon Way. So I'll see you all very shortly, and for lunch at 11:30. Okay, thank you. Thanks, board.